I was sipping coffee on my balcony in Paris, the Eiffel Tower, glinting in the morning sun, when the call shattered my world. At 55, I'd built a quiet life abroad, semi-retired consulting from afar, far removed from the family drama back home. Grandma had been my anchor, the one who raised me through tough times, whispering promises of a special gift that would secure my future. When she passed, I mourned from across the ocean, assuming her condo, the one she'd willed to me, would be my peaceful legacy. But days later, my parents rang, their voices laced with false cheer. "Everything's taken care of, dear. No need to worry." Something felt off. I logged into the county records portal, my heart pounding. There it was, the title in my name transferred by Grandma, just before she died. Sold. To my sister. Forged signatures, rushed notarizations, it screamed betrayal. Then the police notice arrived at my door, even here in France. Fraud investigation. My parents had cut me out, pocketing the cash to bail out their debts, thinking I'd never notice. Now, with authorities closing in, they called again, voices cracking. "Please help us fix this. We're family." They begged, humiliated, on their knees over the line. I felt the sting of years of exclusion, the raw wound of Grandma's trust violated. "See you in court," I said, my voice steel. But that's just the beginning. Stick around, this tale unravels shocking secrets. Hidden clauses, a manipulative mastermind in the shadows, and a legacy far greater than any condo. You'll witness the family's empire crumble, truths explode in mediation, and my ultimate rise from victim to victor. By the end, you'll feel the sweet rush of justice served, twists that blindside, and a payoff that empowers. Don't miss a second, it's revenge at its most satisfying. My name is Emily Harper, 40 years old, a freelance cultural heritage consultant who traded the frantic pace of New York for the gentle rhythm of Paris 8 years ago. I specialize in helping museums digitize fragile archives work that lets me set my own hours and keep my heart anchored to the past while living in the present. I'm the woman you see at the corner cafe with a laptop and a café crème, hair twisted up with a pencil, smiling at the waiters who now greet me by name. That morning began the way most of my mornings do, the soft clatter of the baker sliding baguettes into the oven downstairs, the faint scent of butter drifting up the stairwell, and the golden light spilling across my tiny balcony. I had just poured my first cup when the phone buzzed against the wrought iron table. The screen showed Mom, USA. I smiled, assuming it was one of her periodic check-ins, short, warm, a little distracted. We weren't the kind of family that talked every day, but we managed. Distant, yes, but manageable. I pressed accept and lifted the phone to my ear. "Emily, honey," her voice cracked on the second syllable. "It's about Grandma." The words arrived like a sudden winter wind. Grandma, my North Star. The woman who taught me that strength isn't loud, it's the quiet certainty that you will protect what matters. I set the cup down so hard that coffee sloshed over the rim and pooled like dark blood on the saucer. I was 7 the first time she let me stay overnight at her condo in Sarasota. The place smelled of lemon polish and salt air, and the guest room had a window that looked straight onto the Gulf. She tucked me in with a quilt she'd sewn from her mother's dresses, tiny squares of faded floral cotton, and whispered, "One day, little bird, I'll give you wings bigger than this room." I thought she meant the condo. I was wrong. Grandma never married again after Grandpa died. Instead, she filled her life with bridge clubs, charity luncheons, and me. Every summer I flew down from whatever city my parents had dragged us to that year, and she met me at the airport with a sign that read, "VIP Granddaughter." We'd drive back to the condo with the windows down, her silver hair whipping like a victory flag. She taught me how to make key lime pie without a recipe, how to spot dolphin fins at sunset, and most importantly, how to listen to the quiet voice inside that says, "This belongs to you. Protect it. Promise me," she said one evening when I was 15. Her arthritic fingers wrapped around mine on the balcony rail. The sky was the color of peach ice cream. Promise me you'll always guard what's yours. Not just things, Emily. Your peace, your name, your future. She pressed something small and cold into my palm, a brass key on a faded red ribbon. This opens more than a door, she murmured. Keep it close until the time is right. I wore that key on a chain around my neck for years. Even now at 40, it rests against my collarbone, a talisman I touch when contracts get tricky or loneliness creeps in. Grandma called it my freedom key. I never asked what it unlocked. I trusted her the way you trust the tide to return. Back in Paris, Mom's voice pulled me from the memory. She passed peacefully in her sleep. The funeral's tomorrow. We didn't want to interrupt your project. A pause. Everything here is handled. Handled. The word lodged in my throat like a fishbone. Grandma had been meticulous. Years earlier, during one of our long-distance calls, she'd told me she'd updated her trust. The condo goes to UM. No arguments, no middlemen. I've made sure of it. I'd laughed, told her she'd outlive us all. She'd chuckled, that low, satisfied sound that meant business was settled. Yet no one had called until now. No tears, no details, no invitation to the service. Just handled. My parents had always treated me like the family satellite orbiting, useful for occasional advice, but never central. My sister Claire lived 10 minutes from them, married to a lawyer, mother of 2 perfect grandchildren. Claire got the Sunday dinners, I got the Christmas cards. It stung sometimes, but I'd made peace with the distance. Or so I thought. I booked the earliest flight I could find, but storms over the Atlantic delayed me 2 days. By the time I landed in Tampa, the funeral was over. The condo shutters closed, and my inbox held a single group email. Thank you for your thoughts. Grandma's affairs are concluded. No signature from Claire. No mention of the condo. Nothing. I told myself it was grief making them brusque. I told myself the condo would wait, brick and mortar don't vanish. I told myself a lot of things on the red-eye back to Paris, the brass key warm against my skin. 3 days later, settled again on my balcony with a fresh cup, I opened my laptop to check the county property records. Old habit from my archival work. I liked knowing the paper trail was clean. I typed in Grandma's address. The page loaded. Owner Emily Harper. Transfer date 6 months ago. A second entry followed, sale recorded 4 days after her death. Buyer Claire Harper Mason. Sale price suspiciously round, suspiciously low. My pulse hammered in my ears. I scrolled to the signatures. There, in black and white, was my name, looping familiar, forged. Someone had signed for me. Someone had cashed out my legacy while I mourned an ocean away. The phone rang again. Mom's name on the screen. I stared at it, the brass key suddenly heavy as guilt. I let it ring twice, 3 times, then pressed accept. Emily. She began, voice trembling with rehearsed calm. We need to talk about the condo. Just when I thought Grandma's gift would bring peace, I got the call. Emily. Harper here, still 40, still in Paris. Though the city's charm had curdled into something brittle, the instant Mom's voice said those 6 words: we need to talk about the condo. I sat on the edge of my velvet chaise, the phone pressed so hard against my ear I felt the pulse in my temple. The afternoon light slanted through the tall windows, striping the parquet floor in bars of gold, but the warmth couldn't reach me. I waited. Silence stretched like a held breath. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Honey, there's no easy way to say this. The condo's been sold. The sentence landed flat, almost casual, as if he'd announced the grocery list. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. Sold. Grandma left it to me. She told me herself. The trust. Things got complicated. Mom cut in too quickly. Medical bills, taxes, upkeep. We couldn't let it sit empty while you're over there. The last 2 words carried the faintest edge, the same one she used when I missed Thanksgiving because of a deadline in Lisbon. Over there. As though France were a moral failing. I closed my eyes and saw Grandma's balcony, the way the Gulf breeze lifted the hem of her linen blouse. She'd gripped my hand the last time we spoke on video, her knuckles white. Promise me you'll fight for what's yours, Em. Paperwork is just paper until someone tries to burn it. I'd laughed, then kissed the screen, told her I loved her. Now the memory felt like a bruise. Who signed, I asked. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. A pause. Then Dad again, softer, almost apologetic. Claire needed a place closer to the kids' school. It made sense. We handled the details so you wouldn't have to fly back. Handled. There it was again, that word, smooth as oil, slippery as guilt. I pictured Claire, my younger sister by 8 years, standing in Grandma's kitchen measuring walls for new curtains while I grieved across an ocean. Claire, who still called me the expatriate with a smirk, as if choosing a life abroad were a quirky hobby instead of the sanctuary I'd built after their endless comparisons. Handled how I pressed. I'm the beneficiary. My name is on the trust. Mom sighed, the sound of a woman who'd rehearsed this moment. Legal stuff, honey. Power of attorney, emergency clauses. It's all above board. The money's in an account for you, well, most of it. We took a small fee for expediting. A fee. For selling my inheritance. My stomach twisted. I thought of the brass key on its red ribbon, the one Grandma had pressed into my palm when I was 15. This opens more than a door, she'd said. I'd worn it every day since a quiet vow. Now it felt like a joke. I stood pacing the narrow length of my living room past the bookshelf where Grandma's old photo albums leaned like sentinels. Send me the paperwork, I said. Everything. Closing statement, title, transfer signatures. Another silence, thicker this time. Dad muttered something about the lawyer being out of town. Mom jumped in with a bright, brittle laugh. There's no need to get upset, Emily. It's done. The market was hot. Claire got a steal. You'll still come out ahead. Ahead. As if money could replace the salt smell of Grandma's hallway. The creak of the screen door at dusk, the way she'd hum Sinatra while folding laundry. I stopped in front of the window, staring down at the street where a florist arranged buckets of peonies. I want to see the documents, I repeated. Tonight. We'll scan them tomorrow, Dad promised. It's late here. Late. It was barely noon in Florida. I knew the rhythm of their excuses, delay, deflect, disappear. It was the same dance they'd performed when I was 12 and asked why Claire got the new bike while I inherited Grandma's hand-me-down Schwinn. Same steps when I announced my move to Europe, and they asked if I was running away. Same choreography every time I dared to claim space. I ended the call with a polite goodbye that tasted like ash. The apartment felt too small, the walls pressing in with their cream-colored silence. I poured a glass of water, drank it in one go, then another. My hands shook, but my mind sharpened the way it does when a fragile manuscript arrives cracked and I know I have to save it. I opened my laptop on the dining table, the one Grandma had shipped from Sarasota after I landed my first big contract. She'd wrapped each leg in bubble wrap herself, scolding the movers in her brisk Brooklyn accent. I logged into the Sarasota County Public Records portal, something I did routinely for work, chasing provenance on centuries-old letters. My fingers flew across the keys' muscle memory, guiding me through the search fields. Property address, 1420 Gulfview Lane, Unit 12B. Owner history. I hit enter. The page loaded in sections, slow as regret. First, the deed from Grandma to me, dated 6 months before her death. Clean, notarized, filed the same week she'd called to say, "It's official, little bird. Your nest egg." I exhaled, relief flickering. Then the next entry appeared, a warranty deed recorded 4 days after her passing. Seller, Emily Harper. Buyer, Claire Harper Mason. Sale price, $412,000. Market value, according to the county, was closer to $688,000. My breath caught. I zoomed in on the signature page. There, in the looping scrawl I'd practiced since grade school, was my name. Except the Y in Harper hooked left instead of right, the way Claire wrote when she was hurrying. The notary stamp looked legitimate, but the date 2 days before I'd even received the news of Grandma's death made my skin crawl. I leaned back, chair creaking under me. The room tilted Paris outside the window, suddenly a watercolor blur. They'd forged my name while I was still choosing black dresses I'd never wear to a funeral I wasn't invited to. They'd cashed out my future while I toasted Grandma's memory with a solitary glass of Sancerre. I thought of every time I'd let distance excuse their indifference. The birthdays they forgot because Europe's so far. The Christmases where Claire's kids unwrapped mountains of gifts while my care package sat unopened until February. The way Mom always said Claire's so busy with the twins, as if my own life speaking 3 languages restoring history for a living were a hobby I'd outgrown. No more. I bookmarked the page, took screenshots, emailed them to myself with a subject line that simply read, "Evidence." Then I opened a new tab and started a document titled Questions. Number 1. Who notarized a signature I never gave? Number 2. Where exactly did the proceeds go? Number 3. What else had they handled without asking? The brass key glinted against my chest, catching the last slant of sunlight. Grandma's voice echoed steady and sure. "Guard, what's yours?" I closed the laptop, heart pounding with something fiercer than grief. For the first time since the call, I wasn't the satellite. I was the gravity. When I opened the county portal, my heart stopped. When I opened the county portal, my heart stopped. The screen glowed with cold official truth, and I stared at it until the letters blurred. The first document was pure grandma, a quitclaim deed executed 6 months before her death, transferring the condo at 1420 Gulfview Lane, Unit 12B, into my name alone. Her signature sat bold and familiar at the bottom, the same decisive slant she used on birthday cards and grocery lists. The notary seal was crisp, the witnesses 2 neighbors I remembered from childhood summers. Everything about that page felt like a hug from the grave proof that she had kept her promise. Then the second entry loaded. A warranty deed recorded 4 days after Grandma's passing. Seller Emily Harper. Buyer Claire Harper Mason. Sale price $412,000. The market appraisal attached by the county valued the unit at $680,000 on the day of closing. My lungs forgot how to work. I clicked the attached images and the closing packet unfolded like a crime scene. Page after page of legalese escrow statements, tax prorations, all stamped approved in red. And there, on the signature line reserved for the seller, was my name in ink that looked almost but not quite like mine. I zoomed to 200%. The loop of the Y in Harper curled left instead of right the way Claire signed when she was in a hurry. The cross on the T sat too high, the pressure too light. I had spent years perfecting my own flourish, a tiny flourish Grandma teased me about, and this imposter had missed it completely. My stomach lurched. Someone had sat at a polished table, probably in the same title company Grandma used for decades, and pretended to be me while I was still choosing flowers for a memorial I never attended. I scrolled to the notary block. The jurat was dated 2 days before Mom's first phone call, before I even knew Grandma was gone. The notary's name was unfamiliar, the commission number printed in a font slightly off-center, as if the stamp had been pressed in haste. I opened a new tab and ran the notary's license through the Florida Department of State database. Valid, but the address listed was a strip mall mailbox service 20 miles from Sarasota. Red flag number 1. Red flag number 2, the acknowledgement stated that Emily Harper personally appeared and produced a driver's license. My passport had been in Paris the entire week. My Florida license expired 3 years ago when I let the state know I was a permanent expatriate. I printed every page the printer in the corner of my office, whirring like an angry bee. 37 sheets in all, each one a fresh cut. I spread them across the dining table, the same table Grandma had shipped to me, wrapped in her own quilts. The escrow check stub showed disbursement to an account ending in 5512, a number I didn't recognize. A line item labeled Seller Concession deducted $268,000, the exact difference between sale price and appraisal. Someone had pocketed the equity and called it a favor. I sat back, the brass key on its ribbons suddenly cold between my collarbones. Grandma's voice drifted through the room, soft but ironclad. Guard, what's yours? I had guarded manuscripts older than nations' letters written by queens and revolutionaries, but I had failed to guard the one thing she entrusted to me. The condo wasn't just walls and windows. It was the last place on earth where I was somebody's little girl. Claire now owned the balcony where Grandma taught me to read the clouds, the kitchen where we burned our first pie, the bedroom where she tucked me in with stories of her own childhood in Brooklyn. Claire, who had never once visited without complaining about the humidity. I thought of the voicemail I'd ignored from the property manager 2 weeks ago. Something about new owners requesting key codes. I'd assumed it was routine maintenance. I thought of the Christmas card Claire sent last year, a glossy photo of her family on that very balcony, the Gulf glittering behind them like a private swimming pool. I had smiled at the picture, proud of the view Grandma loved. Now the image felt like a taunt. My phone buzzed on this table, Claire's name flashing. I let it ring out. Another buzz, a text. Hope you're enjoying Paris, kids. Love the new pool. XOXO. Pool. The condo didn't have a private pool. The complex shared one. She meant the beach, or worse, she'd already installed something garish on Grandma's terrace. I pictured inflatable flamingos bobbing where potted hibiscus used to bloom, and nausea rolled through me. I stood pacing the length of the apartment, my bare feet silent on the herringbone floor. The betrayal wasn't just financial. It was surgical. They had erased me from the story while I was still writing it. My name on a deed I never signed, my inheritance funneled into accounts I couldn't access, my grief weaponized into permission. I opened the balcony door and stepped into the evening air, the city's hum, a distant lullaby. Somewhere below, a couple argued in rapid French. Somewhere across the ocean, my sister slept in my sheets. I went back inside and opened the scanned closing statement again. Buried on page 23 was a writer titled Seller's Affidavit of No Liens. My forged signature appeared a second time, this one even sloppier, as if the forger had grown cocky. Next to it, a thumbprint smudge, dark and accidental. I zoomed until the ridges were visible. Not my thumb. I compared it to the driver's license photo I still had in my cloud storage, the one taken when I renewed at 25. The whorls didn't match. Evidence. Real physical evidence. I saved the image, heart hammering so hard I felt it in my teeth. I created a new folder on my desktop labeled Grandma and dragged every file inside. Then I emailed the folder to my work address, my personal address, and the cloud drive I used for irreplaceable manuscripts. Redundancy was my religion. The sun dipped behind the rooftops, painting the walls the color of dried blood. I poured a glass of water but didn't drink it. Instead, I stood over the table, staring at the papers until the words swam. Grandma's condo, my condo, Claire's condo. The brass key glinted under the pendant light, catching the reflection of my own eyes, wide and furious. I touched it, and for the first time since her death, I felt her beside me, not as memory, but as mission. I was still standing there, surrounded by the autopsy of my inheritance, when the doorbell rang. Not the intercom, the actual door. I froze. No one visited unannounced. My building required buzz-in. I walked to the peephole and saw a liveried courier holding a thick manila envelope. My name was typed in block letters, no return address, only an official seal embossed in red wax. I opened the door, signed for it with a hand that didn't shake, and carried it back to the table like a live grenade. The seal cracked under my thumb. Inside was a single sheet on Sarasota County Sheriff's Office letterhead, crisp and impersonal. A case number. A request for statement. An investigation into possible title fraud. My name listed as both complainant and potential witness. At the bottom, a detective's direct line and the words, "Please contact immediately." Then an official envelope arrived. From the police. Then an official envelope arrived. From the police. The courier's footsteps had barely faded down the hallway when I slit the seal with Grandma's old brass letter opener, the one she'd used to open decades of birthday cards. Inside lay a single sheet on Sarasota County Sheriff's Office letterhead, crisp and heavy, the kind of paper that means business. Case number 2025-11847, fraud. My name appeared twice, once as registered owner, once as reporting party. The body of the letter was short, polite, and chilling. Please provide any documentation supporting your claim of ownership of 1420 Gulfview Lane Unit 12B, including but not limited to the quitclaim deed executed by the decedent. Failure to comply may result in obstruction charges. A detective's name, badge number, and a direct line. A deadline 7 calendar days. I read it 3 times, each pass colder than the last. The condo wasn't just sold. It was under active investigation. Someone had triggered an alarm, and the county was treating it like a crime scene. I set the letter beside the printed closing packet, the 2 documents staring at each other like rival chess pieces. My pulse slowed to a deliberate thrum. This was no longer about hurt feelings. This was about jurisdiction. Jurisdiction that could freeze assets, subpoena bank records, and put people in interview rooms with bad coffee. I photographed the letter front and back, uploaded the images to my secure drive, then dialed the detective's number. Voicemail. I left a calm message. Emily Harper returning call, currently in Paris, available by video or email will. Overnight originals tomorrow. I hung up and opened my calendar, blocking the next 48 hours for nothing but this. Then I called the courier service back and scheduled a pickup for FedEx to Sarasota, priority signature required. The originals would travel faster than I could. The phone rang while I was sealing the envelope. Mom again. I let it ring twice, steeling myself, then answered. I got the sheriff's letter, I said before she could speak. Silence thick as felt. Then a sharp intake of breath. Emily listened, Dad's voice hoarse as if he'd been shouting. We need to talk, now, video, please. I opened my laptop, accepted the incoming FaceTime, and there they were. Mom in the kitchen. I grew up in. Dad hovering behind her shoulder, both pale under the fluorescent light. The background clock read 2:17 p.m. Florida time. Mom's eyes were red, our 9-month-immed Dad's tie askew. They looked like parents who'd just been read their rights. The detective called us this morning, Mom blurted. They want bank statements, closing docs, everything. They're treating it like we stole something. You did, I said quietly. The words hung between us, simple and undeniable. Dad leaned closer to the camera, his face filling half the screen. It wasn't like that. We were drowning Em. Your mother's medical bills from last year, the roof. Claire's tuition loans for the boys, everything piled up. The condo was sitting empty. Claire needed, I echoed. And I didn't. Mom wrung her hands. We thought you'd understand. You're doing so well over there. We took a loan against the equity to keep the lights on. When Grandma passed, the bank called the note. We had 30 days or foreclosure. Claire's husband said he could handle the transfer quietly, keep it in the family, avoid probate fees. I closed my eyes, counting heartbeats. Probate fees. The condo was already in my name via trust. There was no probate. Another lie, polished and practiced. I opened my eyes. You forged my signature. Dad flinched. It was the power of attorney clause. Temporary. We planned to tell you once the dust settled. There is no temporary power of attorney for selling real property without consent, I said. That's fraud. Mom started to cry, soft, hiccuping sobs. Please, Emily. If this goes public, your father could lose his pension. The neighbors, the club, they'll crucify us. We'll pay you back every cent with interest. Just tell the detective it was a family misunderstanding. I studied their faces, searching for the parents who'd once driven me to piano lessons and cheered at graduation. They looked smaller, folded in on themselves. I thought of the summer I was 16 when Dad's business nearly folded. He'd sat me down at this same kitchen table and explained compound interest using napkins and a calculator. Never borrow what you can't repay in pride, he'd said. I wondered where that man had gone. Another memory surfaced, Mom's hospital stay 2 years ago, the GoFundMe Claire had set up without asking me. I'd wired $5,000 from Paris, no questions. They'd thanked me in a group text. I thought of the Christmas when Claire's minivan needed brakes, and I'd sent a check because the kids can't be stranded. Each time I'd told myself it was love, not obligation. Now I saw the pattern. I was the emergency fund with a passport. I'm sending the originals to the detective tomorrow, I said. Certified mail. You'll get copies. Dad's voice cracked. Emily, please. We're begging you. One family meeting. Let us explain. We'll sign anything, repay anything. There's nothing to explain, I said. You chose Claire's convenience over my legal rights. You chose silence over respect. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a decision. Mom reached toward the camera as if she could touch me through the screen. You're our daughter. Blood doesn't forge signatures, I cut in. Blood doesn't sell inheritance without a conversation. Blood doesn't leave the other child to discover it on a public website. Dad slumped against the counter. For the first time, I noticed the stack of unopened mail behind him, the red-stamped final notice on top. I felt a flicker of pity, then smothered it. Pity wouldn't return Grandma's balcony view. I'll call you when I've spoken to the detective, I said. Do not contact Claire until then. Do not touch any accounts. If you do, I'll know. I ended the call. The apartment fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I looked at the FedEx envelope already addressed in my neat archival hand. Inside the quitclaim deed, the forged warranty deed, the sheriff's letter, my passport scans, proving I was in France on the closing date. I added a sticky note with the detective's case number, then sealed it with tape that could withstand customs inspectors. I walked to the balcony needing air. Paris glittered below, indifferent and alive. I thought of Grandma's voice the last time we spoke, thin but fierce. They'll test you, little bird. Fly higher. I touched the brass key at my throat. Higher. Back inside, I opened a new document and titled it Family Ledger. I listed every transfer I could remember, the hospital wire, the minivan brakes, the tuition top-up. Then I added the condo's true market value minus the sale price. The total made my breath catch. I saved the file, encrypted it, and emailed it to myself with the subject line, Never Again. The courier would arrive at 9. Until then, I had a folder on the table thicker than any I'd ever curated for a museum. Every page a betrayal, every margin a question. My parents had opened this door. I would walk through it with evidence in hand. I held the folder they were too scared to touch. The weight of it pressed against my ribs like a second heartbeat, every page inside a silent accusation. I carried it to the small, roll-top desk Grandma had given me when I left for college, the one with the secret drawer she swore hid love letters from the 1940s. I slid the folder into that drawer, closed it, and turned the tiny brass key that still fit perfectly. Then I opened my laptop and did what I always do when the past feels too heavy. I looked for the paper trail. The detective had left an email address in the sheriff's letter, so I wrote a concise message attaching scans of the quitclaim deed and my passport stamps. I explained I was abroad but would courier originals within 24 hours. I asked for guidance on next steps and whether I needed local counsel. I hit send, then stared at the screen, willing a reply. Nothing. The silence felt deliberate, like the calm before a jury enters the box. I needed someone who understood Florida trusts the way I understood illuminated manuscripts. Someone who had known Grandma before arthritis curled her fingers and cataracts dimmed her eyes. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I hadn't dialed in 5 years. Margaret Whitcomb Escrow. Grandma's attorney since the Reagan administration, the woman who drafted the original revocable living trust when I was still in braces. Margaret had retired to part-time practice but kept an office in downtown Sarasota, a narrow brick building wedged between a cigar lounge and a vintage bookstore. I pressed call before doubt could stop me. She answered on the second ring, voice crisp as starched linen. Whitcomb Legal. How may I direct your call? Margaret, it's Emily Harper, Grandma's granddaughter. A soft intake of breath. Emily. My dear, I heard about your grandmother. I'm so sorry. She was a force. She still is, I said, surprising myself with the present tense. I need your help. The condo, she left it to me, but my family sold it. The sheriff is investigating. The line went quiet long enough for me to hear the tick of her grandfather clock. Come to the office tomorrow, she said finally. Bring everything you have. I'll clear my morning. I booked the red-eye to Tampa, packed a carry-on with the folder, a change of clothes, and Grandma's brass key on its ribbon. 12 hours later, I was in the back of a rideshare, the Gulf humidity slapping me awake as we crossed the Skyway Bridge. Margaret's office smelled of lemon oil and old paper exactly as I remembered. She stood when I entered, smaller than memory, but still ramrod straight silver hair in a neat chignon. She hugged me without asking the way Grandma used to. We sat at a round table covered in green leather. I laid out the documents like tarot cards, quitclaim deed, forged warranty deed. Sheriff's letter, my passport. Margaret adjusted her glasses and began to read, lips moving slightly the way scholars do when they're translating Latin. 10 minutes in, she stopped at the trust amendment page and tapped it twice. Here, she said. 6 months before your grandmother passed, she came to me alone. No family, no driver, just her and that walker she hated. She wanted an addition to the revocable living trust. A restrictive covenant ironclad. Margaret slid a single sheet across the table. Paragraph 14. B. The beneficiary. Emily Harper shall have sole and absolute discretion regarding any sale, transfer, or encumbrance of the real property at 1420 Gulfview Lane, Unit 12B. No conveyance shall be valid without her written consent executed in the presence of 2 witnesses and a Florida licensed notary public. Any attempt to circumvent this provision shall render the transaction voidable at the beneficiary's election. I read it twice, the words settling like stones in still water. Voidable, I whispered. Exactly, Margaret said. Your grandmother knew her family. She told me Emily's the only one who listens to the ocean the way I do. She didn't want the condo flipped for quick cash or subdivided for grandkids' college funds. She wanted it preserved until you decided its fate. Margaret leaned forward. The sale to your sister is legally unenforceable without your consent. You can petition the court to rescind it, restore title, and seek damages for fraud. I traced the paragraph with my finger. Grandma had signed it in her careful, slanted script, the same hand that wrote me postcards from every port she visited after Grandpa died. The notary was Margaret herself, the witnesses 2 paralegals I recognized from holiday parties. The amendment was filed with the county the same week Grandma video called to say, "It's official, little bird. Your nest egg is safe. Safe." The word wrapped around me like a quilt. My parents' panic. Claire's smug text, the forged signature, they were all noise against this single quiet sentence. Grandma had built a firewall around my future, and they'd tried to burn it down with a ballpoint pen. Margaret poured tea from a thermos chamomile, the scent taking me straight back to Grandma's sun porch. There's more, she said, sliding a sealed envelope across the table. Heavy cream stock, my name in Grandma's handwriting, the envelope sealed with the same red wax she used for Christmas seals. She left instructions. Open only if the condo is contested. I was to deliver it personally. I turned the envelope over. The wax bore the imprint of her signet ring, a tiny dolphin leaping through waves. My throat tightened. Margaret stood. Take your time. I'll be in the law library if you need me. I waited until the door clicked shut, then broke the seal. The letter unfolded in my hands, 3 pages in Grandma's spidery script dated the same day as the amendment. My dearest Emily, if you're reading this, someone has tried to take what I gave you. Don't be angry too long. Anger clouds the view. Be strategic. The claws is your sword, but your heart is your shield. Remember the summer you were 10 and found that sand dollar broken in half. You glued it back together and said, "It's still whole if we believe it is. Believe you are whole, little bird. The condo is yours to keep or release, but never to lose. There is a second gift hidden where only you would look. Use it when the time is right. And know that every sunrise over the Gulf is me waving hello. All my love, Grandma." I pressed the letter to my chest, tears slipping hot down my cheeks. The room smelled of chamomile and old books, and for the first time since the portal page loaded, I felt Grandma standing beside me, her hand on my shoulder, steady as the tide. The sale wasn't just voidable. It was a paper tiger. I had the power to tear it apart and rebuild on my terms. I folded the letter carefully, slid it back into the envelope, and tucked it into the secret drawer of my heart. Margaret returned with a fresh legal pad, ready to draft the petition she asked. I nodded, the brass key warm against my skin. Grandma had armed me with more than property. She'd armed me with choice. The condo would return to my name, and whatever came next would be my decision, not theirs. And then I opened Grandma's sealed letter, addressed only to me. And then I opened Grandma's sealed letter, addressed only to me. The envelope had rested in Margaret's safe for months, waiting for this exact fracture in the family. I carried it to the small alcove that served as Margaret's reading nook, a velvet wingback chair angled toward a window overlooking the bay. Sunlight filtered through Spanish moss, painting the pages in shifting gold as I unfolded them. The paper was heavy, the kind she reserved for thank you notes after bridge club, and the ink had feathered slightly where her pen paused, as if each word cost her breath. My dearest Emily, if Margaret has given you this, then the wolves have come to the door. I am not surprised. Blood is thick, but greed is thicker, and some hearts mistake inheritance for invitation. Your parents love you in their way, but love bends when fear whispers. Claire has always reached for what sparkled nearest. I saw it in her eyes the day she asked for my pearl earrings just to borrow. I gave her costume pearls instead. She never noticed. The condo is yours, little bird, but it is only the shell. Inside it, hidden where only you would look, is a second gift. Not money, though there is enough to matter. Not jewelry, though there is that too. It is the proof that I trusted your wings more than their cages. Find it when you are ready and use it as you see fit. The clause Margaret added will hold the door shut until then. Stand firm. Do not let tears or guilt sway you. You were raised on stories of women who crossed oceans with nothing but a name and a promise. You are their echo. Forgive when forgiveness serves you, but never surrender what is yours to keep the peace. Peace bought with silence is just another word for surrender. I watch the sun rise over the Gulf every morning and think of you sipping coffee in Paris, smiling at strangers who will never know how fiercely you love. That is my proudest legacy, a granddaughter who builds her own sky. All my love always, Grandma. P.S. The hiding place smells of cedar and salt. You'll know it when you see it. I read it twice then, a third time letting the words settle into the hollow places the betrayal had carved. Greed is thicker. I thought of Mom's trembling voice on the video call, Dad's slumped shoulders, the way they spoke of Claire's needs as if mine were footnotes. I thought of the forged signature, the rushed notary, the sale price that left $250,000 unaccounted for. Grandma had seen it coming the way sailors read clouds before a storm. The second gift. My pulse quickened. She had planted something inside the condo, something requiring the clause to protect it. I pictured the built-in cedar closet in the master bedroom, the one where she kept winter blankets and the faint scent of mothballs. Or the false panel behind the bookshelf where she hid Christmas presents. Or the lockbox bolted beneath the kitchen island, the one she'd shown me when I was 12, saying, "Every woman needs a place no one else can open." I had laughed then, thinking it was for spare cash. Now I wondered. I folded the letter and slipped it into the inner pocket of my blazer, close to my heart. Margaret returned with a fresh pot of tea, but I waved it away. "I need to see the condo," I said. "Today." She nodded without surprise. I anticipated as much. The sheriff has placed a lis pendens on the title. No further transfers until the dispute is resolved. Claire can't evict you and you can't be trespassing on property you legally control. I'll call the management company. An hour later, we stood in the lobby of Gulfview Towers, the same marble floor where Grandma used to wait for me with a paper bag of key lime cookies. The concierge recognized me from old photos and handed over a temporary access card without question. The elevator smelled of chlorine and coconut sunscreen, unchanged since my teenage summers. My hands trembled as the doors slid open on the 12th floor. The condo door stood ajar, a cleaning crew's bucket parked outside. I stepped inside, and the air hit me like a memory lemon polish salt breeze, the faint vanilla of Grandma's hand lotion. The furniture was the same, but throw pillows and garish coral had replaced her muted blues. A child's plastic dolphin floated in the sink. Claire's touch loud and temporary. I moved through the rooms with purpose, opening drawers, tapping walls, searching for cedar and salt. The kitchen island yielded nothing. The bookshelf panel was sealed tight. I saved the master bedroom for last. The cedar closet door creaked open, releasing a wave of nostalgia so strong my knees buckled. Winter blankets still hung in dry cleaning bags, but a new addition caught my eye. A small fireproof safe bolted to the back wall, the combination lock gleaming. Grandma's handwriting on a sticky note for Emily. When the time is right. I didn't have the combination yet, but I had the clause, the sheriff's letter, and now this promise. The safe was no larger than a shoebox, but it felt like a vault. I closed the closet door and leaned against it, the wood cool against my cheek. Grandma's voice filled the silence. Stand firm. I straightened, wiped my eyes, and took photos of the safe from every angle. Evidence for Margaret leverage for whatever came next. Back in Margaret's office, I laid out a plan. File the petition to void the sale immediately. Request an emergency hearing. Freeze Claire's access to any proceeds. Demand an accounting of the missing equity. Margaret typed as I spoke, her fingers flying across the keyboard, with the efficiency of someone who had drafted 1,000 ironclad documents. By the time the sun dipped behind the courthouse, we had a 40-page motion ready to file at 9 sharp the next morning. I flew back to Paris that night, the brass key warm against my skin, the letter folded inside my passport. The betrayal still stung, but it no longer paralyzed me. Grandma had given me a map, and I intended to follow it to the end. The condo would return to my name, the safe would open when the moment was right, and whatever waited inside would be mine to wield. I landed at Charles de Gaulle just after dawn, the city waking in soft pinks and golds. I showered, changed, and sat at my desk with a fresh café crème. The resolve that had flickered in Sarasota now burned steady. I would not beg for what was mine. I would reclaim it piece by piece until the ledger balanced. My phone buzzed on the table. Claire's name lighting the screen. I let it ring once, twice, then answered. Her voice spilled through bright and breathless, the sound of someone who believed the game was already won. That night my sister called and she was laughing. The sound spilled through the phone like cheap champagne, bright fizzy, and already going flat. I had just set my cafe cream on the coaster Grandma mailed me from a cruise in '98, the one with the faded map of the Caribbean, when Claire's name lit the screen. I let it ring 3 times, steeling myself, then pressed accept and put it on speaker so my hands could stay free. You will not believe the deal we got. Claire's voice burst out before I could speak. $412 for a 12th floor Gulf front. Mark says it's the steal of the decade. He closed it in like 48 hours. Can you imagine? I leaned back in my desk chair, the brass key cool against my collarbone. Mark. Her husband. The name landed with the weight of a chess piece sliding into place. Congratulations, I said, keeping my tone neutral the way I do when a client tries to rush a fragile manuscript. Oh, stop. You know Mom and Dad made it happen. They're heroes. Dad handled the paperwork, Mom kept the HOA from asking questions. Teamwork, right. She laughed again, the sound edged with triumph. Anyway, the kids are obsessed. We're ripping out that ancient carpet tomorrow. Hardwood all the way. And Mark's already talking about a wet bar where Grandma's old sewing table was. Classy, huh? I closed my eyes and saw the sewing table oak with a drop leaf where Grandma hemmed my prom dress while humming Ella Fitzgerald. I saw the carpet pale beige Berber where I'd sprawled with coloring books every July. I saw Mark's 6'2", golf-tanned, always flashing the smile that closed deals and opened country club doors. I had met him only at weddings and funerals, but I remembered the way he sized up rooms, calculating square footage the way other men counted exits. Sounds like Mark's got big plans, I said. Big try, visionary. He's got contractors lined up, permits fast-tracked. Says the resale in 5 years will pay for both boys' college. Genius. Another laugh, this one lower conspiratorial. Honestly, Em, you should thank us. That place was a money pit. Upkeep, taxes, hurricane insurance. We saved you the headache. Saved me. The phrase lodged in my throat like a fishbone. I opened the laptop beside me and pulled up the county tax assessor's page. The condo's annual taxes were $4,200 less than my Paris rent. Hurricane insurance ran $1,800 bundled with Grandma's meticulous wind mitigation report. Hardly a money pit. I said nothing, letting Claire fill the silence the way she always had. Mark's meeting the designer tomorrow, she continued, words tumbling. He found this marble remnant Carrara super high-end for the kitchen island. And the balcony rail, he's swapping the old aluminum for glass. Panoramic baby. Instagram gold. She paused for breath. You should see his face when he talks about it. Like a kid on Christmas. There it was again, Mark. Mark's vision. Mark's marble. Mark's permits. I counted the mentions 6 in under 2 minutes. Claire had always been the mouthpiece, but this was different. She wasn't describing a family home. She was reciting a pitch deck. I thought of the safe in the cedar closet, the one with my name on it. I thought of Margaret's petition already filed, the list pendants freezing every renovation fantasy. I thought of the sheriff's case number ticking like a bomb. Claire, I said, interrupting her monologue about pendant lights, did Mark handle the closing himself? A beat of silence. Well, yeah. He's in real estate law. Why pay a stranger when family can keep it tight? He notarized everything, filed it same day. Smooth as silk. Notarized. The word hit like a slap. Mark was the notary. Mark had watched someone forge my name and stamped it valid. Mark had calculated the discounted price and pocketed the difference. I opened the warranty deed on my second monitor, the notary block glowing. Mark R. Mason Escree. Commission number EE 338712. The address matched his firm's letterhead, the same one I'd seen on Claire's Christmas cards. Sounds efficient, I said. My voice stayed level, but my free hand curled into a fist. Tell Mark I said hi. Claire barreled on, oblivious. Oh, he'll love that. He's already talking about hosting Thanksgiving. You could fly and crash on the pullout. The guest room's getting bunk beds for the boys, but we'll make it work. Family, right? Family. The word tasted like rust. I pictured her in Grandma's kitchen measuring for that wet bar, Mark sketching floor plans on the back of an envelope, both of them certain the condo was theirs to gut and flip. I pictured the safe untouched waiting. I pictured Margaret's clerk stamping the petition at 9:03 a.m., the courthouse clock chiming like a starting bell. Claire, I said, have you started packing Grandma's things? Another laugh sharper. Packed we donated most of it. Salvation Army. Mark said minimalism sells. Keeps the staging clean. Donated. My throat closed. The quilt squares, the cruise souvenirs, the photo albums with my baby pictures. Gone. I swallowed hard. You kept the cedar closet locked, though. Right. A pause. Cedar closet. Oh, the pantry thing. Mark had the locksmith swap it for a keypad. Easier for the cleaners. Why? No reason, I lied. Just curious. She launched into paint colors, Revere pewter for the walls, Chantilly lace for trim. Her voice rising with each swatch. Mark this, mark that. Mark's eye for resale. Mark's contractor buddy. Mark's vision for a rooftop deck the HOA would never approve. I let her talk, each sentence another brick in the wall I was building between us. Claire wasn't the architect. She was the billboard. Mark was the draftsman, and someone maybe both had drawn the blueprint over my grave. I glanced at the clock. 10:47 p.m. Paris time. 4:47 p.m. in Sarasota. The management office would have received Margaret's cease and desist by now, the one forbidding alterations until the title dispute resolved. The locksmith would be turned away. The marble remnant would stay in the warehouse. Claire's laughter would curdle soon enough. Gotta go, I said, cutting her off mid-sentence about shiplap. Early meeting. Wait, Em. You didn't say if you're coming for Thanksgiving. Send photos of the progress, I said. Love to Mark. I ended the call. The apartment fell silent except for the hum of the refrigerator. I opened the trust amendment on my screen, paragraph 14B, glowing like a lighthouse. Then I opened the sheriff's case file, the one Margaret had forwarded, and scrolled to the witness list. Mark R. Mason Escree, listed as notary and interested party. His commission photo stared back, all teeth and confidence. Claire thought she was the queen. Mark had crowned himself king. But pawns don't see the board until the checkmate lands. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from an unknown Florida number. Ms. Harper Detective Ruiz, SCSO. Need to discuss your statement. Urgent. I smiled, small and sharp. The game had moved to the next square. She laughed until the knock came. She laughed until the knock came. I heard it through the phone, 3 sharp raps that cut Claire's giggle in half like a guillotine. A pause, the rustle of fabric, then her voice suddenly small. Who is it? Another knock louder. Sarasota County Sheriff's Office. Ma'am, open up. The line crackled with her intake of breath. I have to go. The call dropped before I could answer. I stared at the black screen pulse drumming in my ears. Paris was midnight dark, the city asleep beyond my windows, but Sarasota was still afternoon, bright and merciless. I pictured Claire in Grandma's living room. Coral pillows scattered the plastic dolphin bobbing in the sink, and 2 deputies filling the doorway with badges and questions. I set the phone down, hands steady now, and opened my laptop to the live feed from the building's lobby camera. Margaret had arranged access through the HOA attorney. The grainy image showed a patrol car parked crooked at the curb, lights off but engine idling. 2 uniforms, 1 female, 1 male climbing the exterior stairs. Claire's door opened on the 12th floor feed. She stood in yoga pants and an oversized college sweatshirt, hair in a messy knot face drained of color. The female deputy spoke, first voice inaudible but posture official. Claire's arms folded tight across her chest. She shook her head, then nodded, then stepped back to let them inside. The door closed. The feed went static with waiting. I refreshed the page every 30 seconds the way I used to refresh flight trackers when Grandma's cruises ran late. 10 minutes. 15. My phone buzzed. Mom video call. I accepted. Mom's face filled the screen, eyes swollen, kitchen light harsh behind her. Dad hovered, tie gone, shirt untucked. Emily. Mom whispered as if volume could hide panic. They're at Claire's. They have a warrant for documents. Mark's on his way, but the deputies won't wait. What do we do? I kept my voice level. You do nothing. You let the process run. Dad leaned in, breath fogging the lens. They're asking about the closing file. Claire's freaking out. She says the lawyer told her everything was legal. A close lawyer, family friend. We didn't know. A close lawyer. Mark. The pieces clicked like tumblers in a lock. I said nothing, letting the silence stretch until Mom filled it. Please, Em. Drive over. Talk to them. Tell them it's a mistake. We'll pay whatever fine, sign whatever paper. Just make it stop. I thought of the summer after my sophomore year when Claire was a senior in high school. I had come home from NYU with a boyfriend named Ryan Tall Quiet studying architecture. We met at a campus poetry reading. He quoted Neruda without irony. I brought him to Sarasota for the 4th of July, proud to show him the Gulf Grandma's pie, the fireworks over the bay. Claire wore a red bikini and a smile sharp as coral. She asked Ryan to rub sunscreen on her back, laughed at his jokes, borrowed his hoodie when the breeze kicked up. By the end of the week, he was driving her to the mall, calling her C, forgetting my name in texts. I found them kissing behind the clubhouse, his hands in her hair, her eyes open and locked on mine. When I confronted her later, she shrugged. You weren't even here most of the year, Em. He got lonely. Ryan flew home with her number in his phone and an apology he never delivered. I never brought another boyfriend to Florida. Now Claire was 32, mother of 2, married to a man who notarized fraud, and still playing the same game. Only this time, the prize was brick and mortar and $250,000. Claire's husband is the close lawyer, I said. Mark notarized the forgery. He's not a friend. He's an accessory. Mom's mouth opened closed. Dad's face crumpled. We didn't know the details, he said. Mark said it was a family favor, power of attorney, temporary. He handled the title company, the escrow. We signed where he told us. Signed where he told them. The image flashed my parents at Mark's glass desk, pens poised. Claire beaming beside them. All of them believing the condo was communal property to divvy like pie. I felt the old sting of being the afterthought, the one whose consent was a formality to forge. On the lobby feed, the condo door opened again. Claire stepped out first, flanked by deputies. She clutched a manila folder the same shade as the one I'd sent the detective. Her shoulders shook. Mark's SUV screeched into the frame tires, squealing. He leapt out, suit jacket flapping, shouting something the microphone didn't catch. The male deputy raised a hand, calm but firm. Mark's face twisted red and furious. Claire turned to him, mouth moving fast, and he grabbed her elbow hard. The female deputy stepped between them. Mark released her palms up, lawyer smile sliding into place. My phone buzzed again. Claire voice only this time. I answered. Background noise, sirens, a child crying. They took the closing file. They're saying fraud felony. Mark says it's a misunderstanding, but they want his bar records. Please come home. Fix this. There's no fixing, I said. There's only truth. She sobbed, the sound raw. Mom and Dad are a mess. They keep saying you have to drop it. For family. Family. The word had lost all flavor. I watched the feed deputies escorting Claire and Mark to separate cars. Mark's hands cuffed behind him, Claire's free but trembling. The patrol cars pulled away, lights flashing silent in the webcam. Mom's voice crackled through the earlier call, still open on mute. Emily, please. I unmuted. I'm not dropping anything. The petition is filed. The safe in the cedar closet is evidence. Tell Claire to lawyer up someone who isn't her husband. Dad's voice broke. We didn't mean— You meant enough, I said, and ended the call. The apartment was quiet again, the city's heartbeat steady beyond the glass. I opened the trust amendment paragraph 14B, glowing like a promise kept. I thought of Ryan's hoodie on Claire's shoulders, Mark's hand on her elbow, the forged loop of my why. Patterns, not accidents. Claire had always taken what shone brightest. Mark had taught her how to keep it. My phone buzzed one last time, the building intercom. I crossed to the panel, pressed the button. The night concierge's voice apologetic. Ms. Harper, there's a delivery. Urgent. From Sarasota. I buzzed him up. He handed over a padded envelope, no return address, only my name in Margaret's neat script. Inside, a single key, brass identical to the one at my throat, and a note. Found in the safe. Combination was your birthday. More inside when you're ready. M. I held the second key, its twin, and felt the past and future click together. Claire's laughter had echoed across an ocean. Now the echo was mine. I whispered through the crack. Remember what's at stake. I whispered through the crack. Remember what's at stake. The words left my lips like a vow and settled into the hush of the apartment. The second brass key lay warm in my palm, its twins still around my neck, and I knew the safe in the cedar closet held more than trinkets. I set the key beside my laptop and opened the encrypted folder Margaret had sent overnight, scanned ledgers, bank statements, and a preliminary forensic report from the title company's escrow account. The numbers stared back cold and accusatory. I had asked for truth. Here it was in 12-point Arial. My phone erupted at 3:12 a.m. Paris time, a three-way video call from Mom, Dad, and Claire. I accepted, propping the laptop on the kitchen counter so the screen filled with their fractured faces. Mom sat at the dining table, mascara streaked. Dad paced behind her shirt, half-buttoned. Claire appeared in a separate window, hair wild, eyes swollen, the background a police station beige. The connection stuttered, then steadied. Mom spoke first, voice raw. Your father lost everything, Emily. The retirement fund, the savings bonds, the cruise account. He gambled it away on those stupid riverboat casinos. I told him to stop, but he said, one more hand, one more jackpot. Dad stopped pacing, face crimson. Don't put this all on me, Linda. You were the one who kept writing checks to cover the overdrafts. You knew the condo was the only asset left. You signed the listing agreement. Claire's window crackled. Stop it. Both of you. I only agreed because Mark said the equity would bail us out. He promised the sale was clean. You two begged me to take it off your hands. I watched them unravel like a poorly knit scarf. Mom pointed at Dad. You sat in that casino parking lot at 2 a.m, texting me for another 1,000. I had to sell my mother's silver to keep the lights on. Dad shot back. And you spent it on Claire's braces. Claire's wedding. Claire's minivan. Always Claire. Claire shrieked, because you never had anything left for me. Emily got the trust, the condo, the summers with Grandma. I got scraps. The accusations ricocheted, each one landing harder than the last. I muted my microphone and let them exhaust themselves the way archivists let brittle pages air before handling. When the shouting dipped to sobs, I unmuted. "Show me the bank statements," I said. All of them. Dad disappeared off screen, returned with a manila folder thick as a phone book. He fanned the pages toward the camera, withdrawals in round thousands, casino ATM receipts, wire transfers to an offshore sportsbook. The dates stretched back 18 months, a slow bleed that accelerated after Grandma's diagnosis. One entry stood out: $42,000 transferred the day before the forged closing labeled title clearance fee. Another $28,000 to an account ending in 7701, the same digits on the escrow stub I'd flagged. Mom wiped her nose. "We thought if we sold fast, we could pay the bookies before they came collecting." Mark said he could structure it as a family transfer, no taxes, no questions. Claire's voice cracked. Mark said Emily wouldn't care. She's in Paris living her fancy life. He said we'd send her half after the dust settled, half of $412,000, minus the $268,000 already missing, minus Mark's fees, minus the gambling hole. I opened the forensic report. Page 7, a Shell LLC registered in Delaware. Mark R. Mason SQ. Sole officer. The LLC received $180,000 from escrow, then wired it to a Cayman account the same day. Page 9. Dad's sportsbook losses totaled $312,000, the exact amount needed to square him with a loan shark named Vinny the Pipe. I leaned closer to the screen. You sold my inheritance to pay Dad's gambling debts and Mark's offshore account. And you thought I'd accept half. Silence. Then Claire whispered Mark said the clause was just boilerplate. He'd handle any pushback. Boilerplate. The word ignited something cold. I forwarded the forensic PDF to all three, attachment titled, "Read this." Page 7, I said. That's Mark's LLC. Page 9 is Dad's debt. You're all accessories. Mom collapsed forward, a forehead on the table. Dad stared at the ceiling, mouth working soundlessly. Claire's window froze, then reconnected. I didn't know about the Cayman account, she said. Mark handles the finances. I just signed where he pointed. I thought of the safe, the second key, the combination set to my birthday. I thought of Grandma's warning about greed thicker than blood. Send me every document you have, I said. Email cloud, hard copies. Now. Dad scrambled to his scanner. Mom opened a drawer, pulled out a flash drive. Claire disappeared, returned with a shoebox of receipts. The next hour was a frenzy of uploads: credit card statements, casino comp cards, emails from Mark with subject lines like, "Urgent condo closing tomorrow." One PDF caught my eye. A contract between Dad and an outside planner named Vincent Moreau, dated 3 weeks before Grandma's death. Services: debt restructuring and asset liquidation. Fee: 15% of sale proceeds. Signature: Mark R. Mason, authorized agent. Vincent Moreau, Vinny the Pipe. The outside planner wasn't a stranger. He was the hammer over Dad's head. Mark had brokered the deal, taken his cut, and left my family holding the bag. I saved everything to a new folder labeled Collateral. The ledger was complete. Dad's addiction. Mom's denial. Claire's complicity. Mark's orchestration. Vinny's threat. I closed the laptop and stood at the window, watching the Seine reflect the first pale light of dawn. Loyalties had crumbled into dust, and the truth lay in the rubble. My phone rang again, this time an unknown Sarasota number. I answered. A woman's voice, elderly, quavering, but clear. "Miss Harper. This is Evelyn Roth, Unit 12A, next door to your grandmother's. I saw the police cars yesterday. I need to talk to you. I saw everything." Then the neighbor rang. I saw everything. Then the neighbor rang. I saw everything. The voice on the line belonged to Evelyn Roth, 83 years old, widowed, and the only person in Gulfview Towers who still watered her geraniums by hand every dawn. I had known her since I was 9 when she taught me to play gin rummy on the pool deck and slipped me peppermints from a tin shaped like a seashell. Her words now carried the same calm authority she once used to scold teenagers for cannonballs after 5. Emily, dear, I'm at Margaret Whitcomb's office. She says you need my statement today. I'm ready. I booked the next flight to Tampa, landed at dusk, and took a cab straight to the brick building wedged between the cigar lounge and the bookstore. Margaret met me in the lobby, eyes bright behind her glasses. Evelyn sat in the conference room posture, perfect, a navy cardigan buttoned to the throat despite the Florida heat. A stenographer waited in the corner, fingers poised over a machine that looked older than I was. We began with formalities. Full name, address, relationship to the decedent. Evelyn's answers were crisp, her memory sharper than most people half her age. Then Margaret nodded and Evelyn leaned toward the microphone. It was Tuesday, 3 weeks before your grandmother passed, she said. I was on my balcony pruning the hibiscus when I heard voices from 12B. Loud voices. Your sister Claire was inside with your parents. I couldn't see them through the sliders, but the windows were open and sound carries over the courtyard. She described Claire pacing the living room phone to her ear, gesturing wildly. She kept saying, "Sign it now, Dad, before the bank freezes everything." Your father sat at the dining table, head in his hands. Your mother stood by the kitchen wringing a dish towel. Claire slid papers across the table, one after another. It's just a formality, she told them. Mark will file it tomorrow. Emily won't even notice until we send her the check. Evelyn paused, sipped water from a paper cup. Your father asked, what if she fights it? Claire laughed, same laugh she had at 16 when she took your bike without asking. She's in Paris, Dad. By the time she figures it out, the money will be in trusts for the boys. Then she opened her purse, pulled out a pen, and placed it in your father's hand. He signed. Your mother signed next. Claire gathered the pages, tapped them into a neat stack, and said, Perfect. Mark will handle the rest. Margaret interjected gently. Did you see the documents themselves? Evelyn nodded. From my angle, I saw the top sheet. Warranty deed. Buyer Claire Harper Mason. Seller Emily Harper. The signature line for Emily was blank. Claire noticed me watching, waved like nothing was wrong, and closed the sliders. But I'd already seen enough. I felt the room tilt. Evelyn continued. 2 days later, a man in a suit came to 12B. Tall, tanned golf shirt. I recognized him from Claire's Christmas cards. Mark. He carried a folder and a notary stamp. Stayed 20 minutes. When he left, Claire hugged him on the threshold. I heard her say, Tell Vinny we're square. Vinny. The loan shark from the forensic report. I exchanged a look with Margaret. Evelyn wasn't finished. The next week, your parents came alone. Your father looked ill. He asked if I'd seen anyone suspicious. I said no. He thanked me, but his hands shook. I knew then something was terribly wrong. Margaret slid a pre-drafted affidavit across the table. Evelyn read it aloud, correcting 2 minor details, then signed with a flourish. The stenographer transcribed, notarized, and sealed. 3 copies. 1 for the court file, 1 for the sheriff, 1 for me. Margaret added a cover letter citing Florida Statute 695.226 fraudulent acknowledgement by notary grounds for immediate title rescission. I walked Evelyn to the lobby. She patted my cheek. Your grandmother trusted you with her stories. Now you tell hers. She pressed the seashell tin into my hand, still half full of peppermints. I hugged her, smelling lavender and determination. Back in Margaret's office, we mapped the impact. Evelyn's testimony established coercion, premeditation, and third-party involvement. Combined with the trust amendment's restrictive covenant, the sale was not merely voidable. It was void, ab initio, never legally effective. The affidavit would be attached to an emergency motion for summary judgment, filed first thing Monday. Claire's renovations would halt. Mark's bar license would face review. Vinny's name would trigger a multi-agency task force. I spent the evening in a hotel near the courthouse, scanning every page of Evelyn's statement, cross-referencing dates with the casino receipts, and Mark's LLC transfers. I built a timeline on legal paper color-coded blue, for coercion red, for forgery green for payoffs. The pattern was airtight. At 2:00 a.m., I emailed the complete package to Detective Ruiz with the subject line Urgent Witness Affidavit. I blind copied the state attorney's public corruption inbox a tip Margaret had slipped me over coffee. By sunrise, I was on the hotel balcony, Gulf breeze lifting my hair the way it used to when Grandma and I watched dolphin pods at twilight. The peppermint tin sat open beside me, the candies clicking softly. I thought of Evelyn pruning hibiscus ears tuned to the courtyard like a sentinel. I thought of the safe, still waiting combination, my birthday contents unknown, but promised. I thought of the family I had loved now reduced to signatures on a lie. I booked a courier to deliver physical copies to the district attorney's office before noon. The envelope was thick, sealed with red wax I'd melted using Grandma's old candle stub. Inside Evelyn's original affidavit, the timeline, the forensic report, and a cover letter citing felony conspiracy, notary fraud, and elder financial abuse. I paid extra for signature confirmation and tracking. The courier left at 8:47 a.m. I watched the tracking number update picked up en route delivered. The receptionist signed at 11:03. I refreshed the page every minute until the status changed to received. Only then did I allow myself a breath. My phone buzzed Claire, voice only frantic. M, the HOA, just padlocked the condo. They say we can't enter. Mark's screaming about contempt. What did you do? I said nothing, let her rage echo into silence. Mom texted next. We're so sorry, please call. Dad sent a single emoji, a broken heart. I deleted them all. The affidavit was ironclad. The sale would unravel in open court. The safe would open on my terms. The truth had a witness, and the witness had a voice. They had no idea I'd already mailed copies to the DA. The realization settled over me like the hush before a storm breaks, and 3 days later, I walked into the mediation room at Margaret's firm with the weight of it in a slim leather folio. The space was neutral beige carpet, long oak table, pitcher of water sweating in the center. Claire sat on one side, flanked by a new attorney whose suit cost more than my annual Paris rent. Mom and Dad occupied the opposite chairs, shoulders touching for the first time in weeks, both looking as if sleep had become a foreign country. Margaret took the head. I took the foot directly across from Claire. The court reporter's fingers hovered above her machine. A digital recorder blinked red. I opened the folio and slid a single sheet across the polished wood. This is the choice, I said. Sign the stipulated rescission, return the condo to my name, pay restitution for the missing equity, and cooperate fully with the state attorney. Or we proceed to trial next month. The DA has the file. Felony charges are already drafted. I let the words land, then added the affidavits one by one like cards in a winning hand. Evelyn's sworn statement, the forensic accounting, the trust amendment, the Cayman wire trail. Each page made a soft slap against the table. Claire's attorney cleared his throat. My client maintains the transaction was a good faith family arrangement. Stop! I cut him off without raising my voice. Your client watched my father sign under duress while my mother cried in the kitchen. Your client's husband notarized a forgery. Your client donated my grandmother's quilts to strangers. Good faith doesn't live here. Mom flinched at the word quilts. Dad stared at the table, knuckles white. Claire's eyes darted to the exit, then back to me, calculating. I leaned forward. I'm going to speak now, and you're going to listen. All of you. I started with the summers, the smell of key lime zest on Grandma's fingers, the way she taught me to fold fitted sheets into perfect squares. I told them about the brass key she pressed into my palm at 15, the promise that it opened more than a door. I described the cedar safe the combination set to my birthday, the second key that arrived by courier while they were busy measuring for marble. I told them how I stood in the empty condo after the locksmith left, running my hand over the panel that still smelled of salt and cedar, and felt her standing beside me, fierce and unafraid. "I was in Paris when she died," I said, voice steady. "I never got to hold her hand. You took that from me too. You took the last place where her laugh still echoed, where her quilt still carried her scent, where the balcony rail still held the warmth of her arms around my shoulders. You took it because Dad's losses were a secret, because Mom's silence was easier than confrontation, because Claire wanted a bigger stage, and Mark wanted a bigger bank account. You took it, and you thought distance would keep me quiet." Dad made a sound, half sob, half groan. Mom reached for his hand, but he pulled away. Claire opened her mouth, closed, it opened it again. "We were going to send you money." "Money," I repeated. "You think money replaces the mornings I won't have with her coffee on that balcony? The evenings I won't have watching dolphins with her binoculars? You think a check erases the fact that strangers slept in her bed before I could say goodbye?" Silence pooled thick and suffocating. The court reporter's fingers stilled. Margaret watched, expression unreadable. I slid another document forward, the emergency motion for summary judgment already stamped, filed. "This goes to the judge tomorrow unless you sign. The DA goes to the grand jury the day after. Mark's bar complaint is public record. Vinny's name is in the affidavit. Choose." Claire's attorney whispered in her ear. She shook her head violently. Mom spoke first, voice cracking. "We didn't know about Vinny. Mark said it was just a loan, a bridge. He said he'd handle everything, keep it quiet. We were scared, Emily. The calls at night, the car that followed your father home. We thought the sale would make it stop." Dad's head snapped up. "You knew about the calls?" Mom's eyes filled. I answered one. "A man asked if I wanted my husband to keep both knees." I hung up and cried in the laundry room. Mark said the condo equity would square it. He said Emily wouldn't miss it. Claire's face crumpled. "He told me the same. Said you were too busy with your fancy life to care about a Florida condo. He set up the LLC, moved the money, told me it was legal structuring." I believed him. I looked at each of them, the family I had once known by heart. "You were played," I said softly. "All of you. By a man who used fear and greed like tools. But you still signed. You still chose." Dad stood abruptly, chair scraping. He walked to the window, shoulders shaking. When he turned back, his eyes were glassy. "There's something else," he whispered. "Something I never told anyone." The room held its breath. He sank into his chair, elbows on knees, face in hands. "Mark isn't the only one who talked to Vinny. I did. Before the sale. He came to the house. Said he knew about the condo, knew it was worth more. Said if I didn't move fast, he'd take it himself through foreclosure or worse. He gave me Mark's card. Said Mark was his guy for clean paperwork." Mom gasped. Claire went white. I felt the floor tilt. Dad lifted his head, tears tracking through the stubble. "I thought I was protecting us. I thought I was the only one who knew." Dad collapsed and confessed the name we never expected. Dad collapsed and confessed the name we never expected. The words tumbled out of him like coins from a broken slot machine, clinking across the mediation table and scattering every illusion we had left. "Mark," he rasped, wiping his face with a trembling hand. "Mark Mason. Claire's husband. He didn't just notarize the papers. He wrote them. He set the whole thing up from the first phone call to the last wire transfer. He told me it was the only way to keep Vinny off our backs, but it was really to cover his own hole." Claire's mouth opened, then closed, a fish gasping on dry land. Her attorney froze mid-note. Mom stared at Dad as if he'd spoken in tongues. I felt the room tilt, the beige walls leaning inward. Mark. The man who had shaken my hand at Claire's wedding with a grip too tight and a smile too wide. The man who had toasted Grandma's memory with champagne he paid for with her equity. Dad kept talking, voice cracking. "Mark came to me 6 months ago, said he'd heard about my losses through a mutual client. Offered to restructure everything. Said the condo was the perfect asset, liquid, unencumbered, and since Emily was overseas, we could move fast. He drafted the power of attorney addendum, told me to get Grandma to sign it during one of her lucid days. She refused. Said it was Emily's alone. So he waited until she was gone. Claire found her voice. That's not true. He told me the power of attorney was already in place. He said you signed it, Dad, after Grandma's stroke. Her eyes darted to Mom. You were there. You saw. Mom shook her head, tears spilling. I saw him wave a paper. I never read it. He said it was routine. Dad laughed a bitter bark. Routine. He had me sign a blank page, Claire. Told me he'd fill in the details later. Said it was standard for family transfers. I was desperate. Vinny had sent a guy to the country club, left a broken golf club on my windshield. Mark promised the sale would square me and keep the family safe. He took his cut first, $180,000 wired to his LLC the day of closing. Then another $50,000 to Vinny as interest. The rest went to the sports book to keep my account open. I thought I was buying time. He was buying silence. I opened the folio and slid the Cayman wire confirmation across the table, the one Margaret had traced through 3 shell entities. Mark's name sat bold at the top beneficiary. Claire stared at it, color draining from her face. He told me that was for the boys' college funds, she whispered. He said it was tax-advantaged. Tax-advantaged fraud, Margaret said quietly. Your husband orchestrated the timing to coincide with Grandma's decline. He monitored her medical records through a contact at the hospice center. He knew the trust amendment existed, but assumed no one would find it before the statute of limitations on fraud kicked in. He used your father's gambling as leverage, your mother's fear as camouflage, and your greed as the engine. Claire's attorney tried to interrupt, but she raised a hand, trembling. No, let her finish. Her eyes met mine, pleading. I knew the price was low. I knew we rushed it. But Mark said you'd never fight, that you were too busy with your European life to care about a condo. He said we'd send you a check later, make it right. I believed him because I swear I did. I looked at her, really looked. The sister who had once stolen my prom date with a smile, who had cried at my college graduation because the spotlight was aimed on her. She had always been Mark's echo, not his architect. He had handed her the script, and she had read it aloud, believing the applause was for her. Dad continued, voice hoarse. Mark kept a second set of books. I found them in his home office when I went to beg for an extension on the Vinny payment. Spreadsheets, offshore accounts, a ledger labeled Family Asset Liquidation. The condo was line item 1. There were others, neighbors, elderly clients. He was running a quiet foreclosure mill using gambling debts as the wedge. I confronted him. He laughed, said I was in too deep to talk. Said if I went to the police, Vinny would take it out on Claire and the boys. Mom sobbed quietly. Claire's hands covered her mouth. I felt the layers peel away, each one revealing a deeper rot. Mark hadn't just exploited a family crisis. He had manufactured it, feeding Dad's addiction with credit lines, then offering the cure at the price of my inheritance. He had used Claire's envy as kindling, Mom's denial as oxygen, Dad's shame as the match. I opened another document, the bar complaint Margaret had filed that morning. Page 2 listed Mark's disciplinary history. 2 prior sanctions for creative trust interpretations, both settled quietly. Page 3 attached the hospice employee's statement, a nurse who had overheard Mark asking about Grandma's prognosis weeks before her final decline. I slid it across. He planned this before she died, I said. He just needed her gone. Claire's attorney finally spoke. This is speculation, without direct evidence. Margaret cut in. We have direct evidence. The LLC wire, the blank signature power of attorney, the hospice log, the neighbor's timeline. And we have Mark's own handwriting on every page of the closing binder. He signed as notary, as escrow agent, as buyer's attorney. He signed every page. Claire stared at the complaint, then at me. What happens now? Now you choose, I said. Sign the rescission, turn over every document Mark touched, testify against him. Or I walk out and the DA walks in. Your boys will visit their father through plexiglass. Silence stretched thick as Gulf humidity. Dad reached for Mom's hand. This time she let him take it. Claire's shoulders folded inward, the fight leaking out of her like air from a punctured tire. She looked smaller than I had ever seen her, a woman who had mistaken manipulation for partnership. I gathered the papers, the weight of truth heavier than any inheritance. Mark had built a house of cards on my grandmother's balcony, and I held the fan. The layered deceit settled over me, not as shock, but as clarity. Every lie had a signature, and every signature had a price. The attorney confirmed he signed every page. The attorney confirmed he signed every page. The sentence hung in the mediation room like the final note of a requiem, and for a moment, no one moved. Claire's attorney closed his briefcase with a soft click. Margaret gathered the documents into a neat stack, her eyes on me waiting. Mom dabbed her cheeks with a tissue that had long since disintegrated. Dad stared at the floor as if the carpet might open and swallow him. Claire looked at her hands, the manicure chipped the wedding ring glinting like an accusation. I broke the silence. Margaret, give us the options. Clean, no spin. She slid 2 folders across the table, one blue, one green. Blue is trial. We file the summary judgment. Monday, attach the hospice logs, the blank signature power of attorney, the LLC wires Evelyn's affidavit. Mark faces felony fraud, conspiracy, notary misconduct. Your parents face accessory charges, possible probation. Claire faces perjury for the closing statements. The condo reverts immediately. You recover the full market value plus punitive damages, likely 7 figures, after the bar disgorges Mark's accounts. The DA indicts within 30 days. Public messy final. She tapped the green folder. Green is settlement. They sign the rescission today, title reverts within 48 hours. They pay the missing $268,000 from Mark's frozen accounts, plus another $100,000 for your legal fees. They issue a public apology through the court on record admitting coercion and forgery. They donate $50,000 to a charity of your choice in Grandma's name. Mark surrenders his law license voluntarily. No criminal charges if they testify against Vinny. Conditional healing, not absolution. Claire's attorney opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. There's a third condition, I said. Non-negotiable. I opened my folio and removed the cream envelope, Grandma's second letter, the one Margaret had delivered with the key. I laid it on the table like a royal decree. Before anyone signs, you listen to this. Out loud. Margaret nodded. I unfolded the pages, the wax seal already cracked, and began to read in a voice that surprised me with its steadiness. To my family, if you are hearing this, you have wounded the one person I trusted most. Emily is not your bank, your shield, or your scapegoat. She is the keeper of my stories, the one who will carry them forward. The condo is brick and mortar. The legacy is the strength to choose mercy when vengeance is easier. If you seek her forgiveness, prove you understand the difference. I paused, letting the words settle. The spiritual legacy, I said, is not the safe, not the money, not even the condo. It is the choice to turn pain into purpose. My condition is this. The charity donation is not a fine. It is the seed of a foundation in Grandma's name for women over 50 who have been financially betrayed by family. You will fund it, staff it, and serve on the board for 5 years. Claire, you will chair the outreach committee. Mom, you will mentor the applicants. Dad, you will speak at every support group about addiction and accountability. You will live the apology, not just sign it. Claire's eyes widened. You want us to work for you? No, I said. I want you to work for every woman who ever trusted the wrong signature. Grandma's legacy is not punishment. It is prevention. You broke her trust. Now you repair it one story at a time. Dad looked up, tears carving tracks through the stubble. I'll do it, whatever it takes. Mom nodded, clutching his hand. Claire hesitated, then whispered, If it keeps Mark away from the boys, I'll do it. Margaret drafted the addendum on the Spot Foundation bylaws 5-year service terms, $50,000 seed from the settlement public launch within 90 days. She printed, we signed, the court reporter notarized. The rescission followed, then the restitution agreement, then the charity clause. Pens moved across paper like stitches closing a wound. I watched them sign each stroke a small surrender. When Claire handed me the pen, her fingers brushed mine, trembling. "I didn't know about the hospice logs," she said. "I swear." "I believe you," I said. "But belief isn't trust. Trust is earned one meeting at a time." Margaret collected the originals, slid copies into manila envelopes. "Title reverts tomorrow. The safe remains sealed until you open it, Emily. The foundation incorporates next week. I'll file the dismissal of criminal referral contingent on compliance." We stood. Mom reached for a hug. I stepped back. 5 years, I said. "Start with the first support group." Dad walked me to the elevator. "I'll be there," he said. "Every meeting. I owe her that." The doors closed. I rode down alone, the brass keys warm against my skin, the green folder tucked under my arm. Justice would have been sweeter in a courtroom, but healing tasted like possibility. I had chosen the harder path, the one Grandma mapped with ink and mercy. I stepped into the late afternoon sun, the courthouse steps warm beneath my shoes. A courier waited with the safe's combination on a card, my birthday forward and backward. I smiled small and fierce. The condo was mine again, the foundation was born, and the family I had lost might one day become allies in redemption. They thought it was over until the news vans arrived. I was crossing Bayfront Park, the salt wind tugging my hair when the first satellite dish rose above the palm line like a mechanical heron. Channel 7, then 10. Then the Tampa affiliate, all clustered outside the courthouse steps where Margaret had scheduled the foundation announcement for 10 the next morning. A reporter I recognized from the local evening news spotted me, microphone already extended. "Ms. Harper, can you comment on the family fraud allegations?" Cameras swiveled. Phones lifted. The story had broken while I slept. It started with a leak, anonymous but precise, the rescission agreement, the bar complaint, the hospice logs, Evelyn's affidavit. By dawn, the Sarasota Herald-Tribune headlines screamed across front pages and phone screens. Local attorney accused of orchestrating grandmother's condo heist. The subhead named Mark, Claire, my parents, and the missing $250,000. Social media ignited. The Gulfview Towers Facebook group, usually devoted to lost cats and hurricane shutters, exploded with 412 comments in an hour. Half condemned the greedy daughter-in-law. Half defended poor Claire, married to a monster. I walked straight into the scrum. Margaret had coached me short, factual, forward-looking. I stopped on the courthouse lawn, the brass keys warm against my collarbone. "My grandmother trusted me with her home and her values," I said. "Today we launched the Harper Legacy Foundation to protect other women from financial betrayal. The condo is back in my name. The truth is public record. Healing begins with accountability." I refused follow-up, slipped through the crowd, and took a side door into the clerk's office to file the incorporation papers. By noon, the story was national. CNN picked up the inheritance theft angle. NPR ran a segment on elder financial abuse. The community split along familiar fault lines. Bridge club ladies who had played with Grandma for decades left casseroles on my hotel doorstep and venom in Claire's inbox. The country club set Mark's golf buddies closed ranks with statements about private family matters. A GoFundMe for Claire's legal defense raised $3,200 before it was reported and frozen. A rival fundraiser for the foundation hit $18,000 in 6 hours. Strangers moved by the idea of turning betrayal into shelter. Claire tried spin. She posted a tearful Instagram live from her SUV, mascara streaking, claiming she was blindsided by a predatory spouse and committed to making amends. The comments were brutal screenshots of her earlier balcony selfies captioned "New pool goals," side by side with Grandma's quilt donation receipt. The video vanished within an hour, replaced by a private account. Her attorney issued a statement about ongoing marital coercion that read like a plea bargain in progress. It convinced no one. Mom and Dad disappeared. Their house went dark, curtains drawn, cars gone from the driveway. A neighbor texted me a photo of a "for sale" sign planted at dawn, the agent's lockbox already swinging. I called, voicemail full. I texted, undelivered. They had fled to a cousin in Naples, the same cousin who once lent Dad money for a sure thing at the track. Shame had finally outrun pride. Support rolled in like high tide. Evelyn organized a vigil on the beach at sunset, 50 women in white holding battery candles, their shadows stretching across the sand. The local bookstore hosted a reading of Grandma's favorite poems. The owner slipped me a first edition Edna St. Vincent Millay inscribed, "To the granddaughter who will carry the light." A retired judge emailed an offer to mediate pro bono if the foundation needed future counsel. Strangers stopped me at the coffee shop to say, "My sister did the same to Mom's house. Thank you for fighting." I spent evenings on the condo balcony, the one Claire had planned to glass in, watching the Gulf swallow the sun. The safe still waited in the cedar closet combination, my birthday contents a mystery I now had legal right to open. I left it sealed, letting anticipation build like storm clouds. The foundation's first grant application arrived via email, a 72-year-old widow whose son had forged her deed to fund a crypto scheme. I forwarded it to the board, Claire's name already listed as outreach chair. The media frenzy peaked with a prime-time special stolen legacy, A Family's Fall. They interviewed Evelyn on her balcony, geraniums blazing behind her. They showed file footage of Mark's arrest cuffs glinting under floodlights. They aired my courthouse statement on loop. Ratings soared. Claire's spin became a cautionary tale in law school ethics classes. Mark's firm dissolved, overnight partners scattering like gulls. I flew back to Paris for a week to breathe, returning to find the foundation's website live donation button glowing. The condo's title recorded in my name alone, the HOA welcoming me with a fruit basket and a new key fob. I walked the rooms at twilight, touching the walls where Grandma's laughter still echoed, planning paint colors that honored her muted blues. Public support became a tide that lifted me. Women sent letters, some handwritten on floral stationery. Others typed in shaky fonts. "You gave me courage to confront my brother. I filed the police report because of you." The foundation's first support group met in the community room, 12 chairs in a circle. Dad's name on the sign-in sheet, his voice cracking as he introduced himself as someone who learned the hard way. Claire attended the second meeting, eyes down, folder of outreach flyers in her lap. She stayed after to sweep the floor without being asked. Mom sent an email with subject line, "First mentoring session notes." Bullet points neat and contrite. Redemption was slow, but it had begun. The day before trial, an emergency motion dropped. The day before trial, an emergency motion dropped. I was in the condo's kitchen measuring coffee into Grandma's old percolator when Margaret called. Claire filed a motion to stay enforcement, she said, voice tight. Claims severe mental distress. Marital coercion requests a 90-day continuance to separate from Mark and enter therapy. She's attached a psychiatrist's letter and a domestic violence intake form. I set the scoop down, ground spilling like dark sand. Claire had spent the past weeks attending foundation meetings in silence, eyes red, hands folded. I had begun to believe the remorse was real. Now this. "Is it legitimate?" I asked. "Partially," Margaret replied. "The psychiatrist is real, the intake form dated yesterday. But the distress claim is thin. No police reports, no restraining order. It's a delay tactic. Judge will hear it tomorrow at 9. I hung up and stood at the balcony slider watching a pelican dive for breakfast. The motion felt like a hook in an old wound. Claire blaming Mark entirely, painting herself the victim, asking for time I had already given in 5-year increments. I thought of the support group, her sweeping the floor, the tremor in her voice when she read the mission statement aloud. I thought of the boys confused by their father's absence, asking when Daddy came home. Mercy and justice wrestled inside me, neither willing to yield. I needed air. I grabbed the brass keys and walked the beach path. Grandma loved sandals, kicking up sand, still cool from the night. The Gulf rolled in steady breaths, each wave erasing footprints behind me. I sat on the same bench where she used to sketch seashells, the wood warm beneath my palms. I closed my eyes and asked her what to do. The answer came not in words, but in memory, her voice the day she taught me to float. "Trust the water, little bird. It holds you if you stop fighting." Back at the condo, I went straight to the cedar closet. The safe still waited combination, my birthday. I had delayed opening it, savoring the mystery, letting the legal storm pass first. Now the motion felt like permission. I knelt, spun the dial 0418 forward, then reverse. The lock clicked. The door swung open on silent hinges. Inside was a rosewood box the size of a shoebox lid carved with dolphins. A sealed envelope taped to the top bore my name in Grandma's script. I lifted the box, heart hammering, and carried it to the dining table. The envelope contained a single sheet for when they try one last time. Open the box. Trust the water. I broke the wax seal on the box. First layer, a velvet pouch heavy with coins. Krugerrands, 20 of them, each worth thousands. Second layer, a flash drive labeled Proof, and a stack of bearer bonds mature totaling $500,000. Third layer, a leather-bound ledger titled Harper Women's Trust, pages filled with account numbers, passwords, and a letterhead from a Zurich private bank. Final layer, a smaller envelope marked Charity Key, containing a brass key on a blue ribbon and a folded document. A charitable remainder trust established 5 years earlier. Beneficiary, the foundation we had just created, current value $2.3 million, funded by Grandma's quiet investments. I sat back, breath shallow. The proof drive whirred to life on my laptop, audio files of Mark on the phone, with Vinny discussing the old lady's condo months before her death. Emails between Mark and the hospice contact trading medical updates for cash. A video of Claire practicing my signature in Mark's office, laughing when the loop finally matched. The charity key opened a safe deposit box in Tampa, instructions included. The motion suddenly looked fragile. Claire's distress was real, but her complicity was recorded. I called Margaret, read the inventory aloud. "We counter with this tomorrow," I said. "But I want to offer her one door." I texted Claire. "Meet me at the condo. Alone. 7 p.m. She arrived in jeans and a foundation t-shirt, eyes puffy, no makeup. I led her to the table, opened the rosewood box, played the audio. Her face crumpled as her own laughter filled the room. When it ended, she whispered, "I didn't know he recorded me." "You knew enough," I said. "But I'm offering a choice. Divorce. Mark, file the restraining order. Turn over every recording he made of you, testify fully. The foundation keeps the trust. The condo stays mine, the boys stay safe. You walk away with supervised visitation and a clean record. Refuse. And this goes to the judge with the motion. Your distress becomes evidence." She stared at the dolphins on the lid, tears falling onto the wood. "He'll fight for custody. He'll lose," I said. "The video shows you practicing forgery. Judges don't reward that. Leave tonight. I'll have Margaret draft the papers." She nodded, slow, the weight of years lifting and settling elsewhere. "I'll do it," she said. "For the boys. For Grandma." I handed her the blue ribbon key. "This opens the future. Use it." She left at dusk, shoulders squared for the first time in weeks. I locked the door behind her, then sat on the balcony as stars pricked the sky. The water held me steady and deep. Morning came swift. I dressed in the navy suit Grandma bought for my first museum job, the brass keys on their ribbons around my neck. Margaret met me at the courthouse with the rosewood box in a locked briefcase. Claire arrived with a new attorney, eyes clear, divorce petition already filed. Mark was served in jail, his own emergency motion denied. We entered the courtroom. The judge took the bench. Claire's attorney withdrew the distress motion. Margaret laid the new evidence on the record, the audio, the trust, the charity key. The judge's eyebrows rose with each page. Mark's counsel stammered, objections overruled. Claire took the stand, voice steady, and repeated her offer to testify. The prosecutor nodded, case strengthened. I stepped into court and every face went pale. The air in the courtroom carried the weight of weeks of revelations, the scent of polished wood and nervous sweat mingling under fluorescent lights. The judge, a woman with silver streaks in her bun and eyes that missed nothing, adjusted her glasses as Margaret laid the rosewood box on the evidence table like a sacred offering. Claire sat at the defendant's table, her new attorney beside her, divorce papers already stamped. Mom and Dad occupied the back row, hands clasped, faces etched with the kind of shame that carves permanent lines. Mark's absence loomed. He watched via video from the county jail, his image pixelated on a side screen, jaw tight. Margaret opened the proceedings with surgical precision. Your Honor, we move to enforce the rescission agreement and present additional evidence discovered pursuant to the trust amendment. She detailed the audio files, the bearer bonds, the Zurich trust statements, each item tagged and authenticated. The prosecutor nodded along, adding the state's intent to pursue racketeering charges against Mark and his associates. Claire's attorney, Rose, voice steady. My client withdraws all objections, affirms the rescission, and offers full cooperation in exchange for immunity on related counts. The judge reviewed the documents, her pen tapping a slow rhythm. She addressed my parents first. Mr. and Mrs. Harper, stand. They rose, trembling. You will read your prepared statements. Dad unfolded a single-sheet, voice cracking from the start. I allowed fear and addiction to blind me to my daughter's rights. I participated in coercion and deceit. I am profoundly sorry and commit to restitution through service. Mom followed, tears falling onto the paper. I chose silence over courage. I failed my mother and my daughter. I apologize and pledge my time to prevent such harm to others. Claire stood last, her statement longer, eyes fixed on me. I envied what I couldn't earn and justified theft with lies. I hurt the sister who deserved my protection. I am sorry beyond words and will spend years proving it. The apologies hung in the air, raw and unadorned, the courtroom silent except for the hum of the recorder. The judge cleared her throat. The court finds the sale of 1420 Gulfview Lane Unit 12B void ab initio, due to fraud, forgery, and violation of the restrictive covenant in the Revocable Living Trust. Title is restored to Emily Harper, effective immediately. The defendants are ordered to pay $268,000 in compensatory damages, $100,000 in attorney fees, and $57,000 to the Harper Legacy Foundation drawn from frozen accounts. Mark Mason is sanctioned $200,000 for notary misconduct and referred to the bar for disbarment. All parties are bound by the service agreements outlined in the settlement. Case closed. The gavel fell, a clean crack that severed the past. Margaret squeezed my arm. I rose, the brass keys warm against my skin, and approached the lectern for my scheduled statement. The room hushed. Your Honor, with the court's permission, I unveil the true scope of my grandmother's legacy. I opened the rosewood box, lifting the Zurich Trust document high. This charitable remainder trust, established 5 years ago, holds $2.3 million in assets designated solely for women over 50, betrayed by family financial abuse. The condo was the shell. This is the heart. Gasps rippled through the gallery. Cameras flashed, the recording was banned. I continued. The Harper Legacy Foundation launches today with this seed. We will fund legal aid, housing, counseling, and education. My grandmother believed betrayal could birth prevention. She was right. I turned to Claire, extending a hand. Repentance is action. Join me as co-chair. Use your pain to guide others. She stood, tears streaming, and took my hand. The courtroom erupted in murmurs, then applause from the public seats, women who had written me letters now witnessing the promise kept. Mom and Dad approached as we exited, eyes pleading. I nodded once. See you at the first board meeting. They nodded back, understanding the boundary. Mark's screen went black, his image vanishing like a bad dream. Outside, the news vans waited, but this time I walked to the microphones willingly. Justice served, legacy launched, I said. Healing starts now. The foundation's website went live mid-press conference, the donation counter spinning past 6 figures before I reached the condo. That evening, I hosted the inaugural board meeting on Grandma's balcony, the Gulf painted in sunset corals. Claire arrived with binders of outreach plans, Mom with mentoring curricula, Dad with a list of recovery speakers. Evelyn brought peppermint cookies. We toasted with sparkling water, the brass keys clinking against glasses. The safe's contents funded the first grants by mourning the trust's dividends, ensuring perpetuity. I stood at the rail as stars emerged, the same view Grandma had shared with me every summer. The condo was mine, the foundation thriving, the family fractured but mending through service. I touched the keys, feeling her presence in the breeze. Forgiveness had not erased the scars, but it had transformed them into strength. And I finally understood Grandma's real gift was the power to forgive and rise. The judge's gavel cracked like the final chord of a symphony that had been building across an ocean and years of silence, and in that instant, the courtroom exhaled. I stood at the lectern, the rosewood box open beside me, its contents now public record, and felt the weight of Grandma's trust settle, not as a burden, but as wings. The sale was void, the compensation ordered, the apologies delivered in voices cracked by regret, and the multi-million charitable trust unveiled as the beating heart of her true legacy. Claire's hand in mine on that balcony later that night, the gulf glittering below us like scattered diamonds, marked the first board meeting of the Harper Legacy Foundation, where repentance became action and betrayal birthed hope. If this story of hidden clauses, forged signatures, family fractures, and ultimate redemption moved, you hit that subscribe button right now and turn on notifications so you never miss the next twist in real-life dramas that prove truth is stronger than deceit. Drop a comment below. Have you ever uncovered a family secret that changed everything? Or fought for an inheritance you were told didn't exist? Share your story. Let's build a community where betrayed women rise together just like Grandma intended. Your like fuels the Foundation's mission, and your voice could be the key that unlocks someone else's courage. See you in the comments, and remember, the real gift is always the power to forgive and rise.